What's going on, everybody? Purari here. Today I'm here in my home studio and I'm going to give you guys an in-depth project breakdown of my remix I did with Frankie Steele of Laidback Luke's My God. Let's take a look at the project right now and see what's up.
Oh my God.
So this is the project of My God. Nothing too crazy going on in this project. The way the track started was My God by Luke was a very, very big track for myself and Frankie. We used to play this track all the time back in 2011, even 2010. And it was a giant big room track before the big room craze even happened. Not too crazy of a track in terms of production. I have the original right here, and it sounds like this. So that's the original track. We really wanted to stay true to the original while giving it a 2020 update. And Frankie and myself went out to one of Luke's gigs here in New York City back in November of 2019. And when I approached him with the idea of I wanted to, make a remake of My God in the 2020 version to give it like an update, he was so down for that. And he kind of gave us the permission to go ahead and do it. So the track started with the drop, which sounds like this. So the track really does stay true to the original while giving it that Purari sound / that 2020 feel that me and Frankie wanted to go for. So I'll start with the kick. And the kick is just a random kick that I found in a pack that sounds like this. So a really sharp, punchy kick drum, typical of the psytrance genre. Just a little bit of an EQ on it, cutting away 30 hertz, giving a little boost at F sharp, and cutting away a little bit of the mud at 140 hertz. And then it has a transient designer on it, just giving it a little bit more attack, just ever so slightly. But what really makes this drop cool is the layer. So instead of using a typical stab, like a synth shot or something, I actually layered a hard style kick underneath the kick, and it sounds like this. And the processing on that, nothing crazy, just another EQ, cutting out some of the very lows, some of the highs to not interfere with the kick. A camel crusher, another EQ, just again, cutting away all these frequencies that clash with the kick. Add a little bit of a reverb with a 1.4 second delay and mixed about 20%. And then lastly, I just put a sidechain on it just so it ducks away the first transient of the kick. So that's the kick drum. Okay, real quick, I'm going to go over the drums. I first started with a psytrance snare, and that sounds like this. Then I added a pre-clap, and as you can see, the pre-clap is actually shifted a little bit before the two right here. And what that does is it adds a more of a humanized feel. Together, they sound like this. Without it. So this way it doesn't sound so computerized or electronic in a sense. It kind of gives it a real feel. Then I added this sweep percussion. It just sucks you into the clap. There's a hi-hat and that sounds like this. If you noticed, I called it hi-hat Laidback Luke, and again, staying true to the original, because we didn't have stems, I had to pull parts and sample parts from the original song, so I just sampled this hi-hat. And I just pulled that right from the original song. So again, keeping some of the real elements in the song. The next part of the drums is this loop. So just adding like a little shaker and then a ride. That's it for the drums. The processing on the drums I used was just an EQ, cutting out anything under 75 hertz. This way it keeps our low end pretty clean. And then I used this El Rey compressor again. It's one of my favorite compressors actually. And I just compressed a little bit of the drums, not too much. Yeah, about like 4 dBs of compression, nothing too crazy. Let's move on to the bass. And the bass sounds like this. So a couple layers in this bass. The first layer is a side trance bass, which is just from Nexus, and it sounds like this. A little bit of processing on it, some Camel Crusher to make it fatter, an EQ just to cut away some of the lows, a little bit of a bit crusher. Logic is really cool because it has this mix knob, and I'm able to mix in some of the bit crushed effect, so it gives it a little bit of a crispiness on the top. And I have a Pro Q3 just cutting away 150 hertz from the side and down and just cleaning things up again. So that's the first layer. The second layer is a really, really minuscule layer, and it sounds like this. And it's super, super low in the mix. It's not meant to be heard. It's just kind of meant to give the tone and give a little bit of the high end in the bass to make it punch through the mix. And what's cool about it is I put this flanger on it. I don't really use a flanger at all. It's kind of like a phasey type of effect, but I thought it sounded cool on this to make the bass kind of move. And one of the last layers of the bass is this down bass, I call it, and it sounds like this. And what that is it's just like a side trance bass pitched down, I guess about an octave or so. Just a little sound I found on Splice, I believe. And then lastly is the sub bass, which sounds like this. You probably won't even be able to hear this sub bass layer. It comes from Nexus. I froze all the Nexus tracks, as you can see, or most of them, because they took up a lot of CPU. But it's just a basic sine wave. I'm sure you guys all know it, with some sausage fattener, a Pro Q, LFO tool for sidechain, just to take away the very first bit of attack. I call it my anti-click preset. This way it just definitely doesn't interfere with the punch of the kick. And then this LFO tool is just inversely parallel to the kick drum. So it plays right after the kick tail ends, the sub bass starts to play, which keeps it really, really tight. And again, altogether, it sounds like this. So that's the bass. Let's go on to the leads now. The leads sound like this. A little bit of a CPU issue. We'll fix that. Actually, the lead is pretty funny because if you look, I actually sampled the synth shot from the original track. We decided, we're going to remake it with some synths, but for some reason, I just couldn't get the right sound. So the main lead is actually just the main synth shot. Super, super dry. I put an EQ on it just to cut away some of the lows, get away some of the nasty frequencies. Distortion with the Camel Crusher. A another EQ to cut away some of the harsh frequencies in like the 600 hertz area. And then I used a bit crusher, but if you look here, I have this preset called limiting that I made. And what's cool about the Logic bit crusher is not only is it a bit crusher, but it actually acts as a soft clipper, which means it just takes away and clips everything, all the peaks that go past this clip level over here. So if you want, you guys can copy these settings and play around with the clip level. It kind of acts as like a really cool limiter, very transparent limiter for me. Just copy these settings down and try it out in your own projects. The second layer is this guy, which comes from Nexus, and it's called Big EDM Lead 1. It sounds like this. And basically, it just follows the sample that we took from the original track, just on top of it, adding another layer. And the third one sounds like this, also from Nexus. This one's called Power from the Kashmir Bank. And it's just adding a little bit more of that high-end grit. Sounds a little bit different than the two, and it really contributes to the whole package. Processing on the lead, I send my reverb to a bus right here, which consists of the Arts Acoustic reverb, the OTT, just to bring out some of the frequencies in the reverb. It actually fattens it up a little bit. I use a Pro Q3, and then what I do, what's really cool in the Pro Q3, is I use a dynamic EQ band, and it just ducks away everything in the mid-range, so while the lead plays just like that, the reverb kind of floats around where the lead plays, because this is the main frequency area where the lead is actually playing. So I think that's a little cool trick that I do. Then there's a compressor, and what the compressor is doing is it's actually sidechained to one of these layers over here. In this case, I think I sidechained it to the main short sample. And if you look, what it does is it ducks the reverb every time the sound plays and then comes back in like a sucking effect. The last trick I used on the reverb for the leads was I actually created a channel based on the bus output by going to here in Logic, making my bus and clicking create track. So I actually see the reverb track on the mixer. And then if you look at the automation, what I did was I automated the volume of the reverb. I also have the reverb going up at this part, which you're going to hear, which adds a kind of sucking effect going into the next part. So listen to how it sounds. So you can hear that little sucking effect that sucks you into the next part. After the first drop, the track sounds like this. And I know I'm going to get a lot of questions about this part because I use this a lot in a lot of my tracks. But pretty much what this is I call it the slow down break. And it sounds like this. So basically what it is the sample, the original lead sample brought into this synth called Anna. Logic's sampler actually just got updated, so you could probably do it in there, but the previous Logic sampler wasn't really that good. So what I did was I took that first synth shot, the main synth shot that I used, and I bounced it to audio, and then I imported it over here into the sampler. So I could play it on my keyboard like this. It plays as a loop in this sampler part right here, so if I hold the note down, it's playing according to the loop that I set. What I did for this part was I made the loop really, really short and then open the loop. So what I do is I take the sample, I make it really, really short, and then I open up the loop end, which makes it sound like it's slowing down at some point. And with a little filtering and reverb, that's what it sounds like. The breakdown's pretty cool. What's cool about the breakdowns is, again, staying true to the original song, we wanted to keep the breakdown in triplets. If you notice, it goes ba 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 ba. But the main drop is actually in a regular 4x4 pattern, which I thought was really creative by Luke back in the day. So we wanted to stay true to that. So it sounds like this. So that's the second breakdown. It's made up from a couple sounds, nothing too crazy. The first one is from Nexus, and it's just this sound called Big Room Lover, because we all love Big Room.
Everybody fucking jump!
And it's just filtered with the filter cut off in Nexus right here. As you can see, it's coming back up. And I do the same thing with the second break sound, which also comes from Nexus, called Pulsar. And the filter cutoff is coming up. The third layer, when the filter opens up, is made from a couple. Obviously, you just heard the first one. The second one. And this third one is the chord layer, which comes from one of my favorite synths, Avenger. Then it has a bass layer, and the bass layer comes from Sylenth, and it's just the Secrets bass from Kashmir and his Sylenth bank. That sounds like this. Very simple sound. A high string, also from Avenger, just to add some added tension. A break bass, which also comes from Avenger. And then all together, it comes up for this really big, big room part. Second build is pretty much the same as the first one. What's really cool is the second drop, which I'm going to get into in a second. So the vocals are pretty cool. I actually found, the original track doesn't have any vocals, but I found this really cool sound on Splice.
Oh my god.
What I did was I put this plugin by Infected Mushroom on it called Manipulator. I took the pitch down by 6 and the formant down by 4. Making it sound like this.
Oh my god.
Then I put one of my favorite vocal plugins, Rvox, just compressing the vocal a little bit.
Oh my god.
Getting it a little bit in your face. Then I use the CLA by Waves, just playing with some of the controls over here.
Oh my god.
And then lastly, just an EQ, cutting away the low frequencies.
Oh my god.
So that was pretty cool. Just like I did with the loop roll effect, with the synth going down, I did the opposite over here, but I did it with the vocals. So what I did in Anna was I sampled the God part of Oh My God, and together with the pitch bend over here and the loop end, instead of making the loop end bigger, I automated it so it gets shorter, and that's how you get this cool loop rolling up effect. So that's that. And the second drop sounds like this.
Oh my god.
So the second drop is really, really cool in my opinion. What we did right here in the first 2 bars was we brought the original Psytrance part back in, but we filtered all the low frequencies out. So it's kind of just teasing you. And then this is the part I like to call the punch bass. Same thing as the leads from the last one, except the bass line changes actually. So the second drop, the bass sounds like this. Which I thought was really cool and brought me back to my Melbourne bounce days. I love the offbeat sound. This one was from Nexus. That's really giving the low end information. And then the top bass is also from Nexus, just a Melbourne bounce bass, I think in EDM4. And that one sounds like this. No low end on it, just some distortion, EQ taking away the low, and an LFO tool, just a sidechain. Altogether, they sound like that. And then from the first drop, I also bring back the side down sound. So yeah, that's the second drop. Nothing else really changes except that I pitched the lead up another octave over here. And yeah, that's the second drop. Okay, so for the last part of this track, I'm going to talk a little bit about the mastering. If you don't do the mix down right, you're not going to get a good master. The first thing I have on my master right here is the Diamond EQ by Luca Predalesi and Studio DMI. The thing about this EQ is it's a color EQ, as you can see right here. What that means is it's not a typical EQ like a channel EQ or a fab filter or something like that. This is meant to add color and brightness to a sound. So what I'm doing right here is I'm actually turning on the preamp. I'm pushing a little bit of the signal into the EQ and then reducing it on the way out. I do a low cut at 25 hertz right here, and then I push a little bit of the 38, looks like 38, 39 hertz with the low frequencies. That's how analog EQs back in the day used to work to get a natural musical sound. So I think that's a cool tip. If you take away of your master, add a little bit of a low shelf and a bump back into the low frequencies. The high mid frequency band, I'm just giving a little bit of a bump at 870 to 6.4K in the mid range. That's just taking the mid range and putting it a little bit more into the front of the mix. And then what's really cool is I have this 50K hertz high frequency air band. You can't even hear anything past 20K, but what this does is this adds a super, super high boost from 50K and down, almost like a high shelf, and it just adds the littlest bit of sparkle to your track. The second plugin I used in the master is the Pro Q3. So after my analog EQ, I used a little bit more of a surgical EQ. Again, just taking away 25 hertz because I don't need anything underneath that. And then what I did was I took away a little bit of a ringing frequency at 9K, 9.6K, and 11K. These guys sounded like this if you boost them. It's careful with your ears. So just took them away ever so slightly. The next plugin I used was the Ozone 8 Imager. What I did here was I took everything from 140 hertz down and made it mono. So if you look at the vector scope right here, everything in this frequency range is just going to be a straight line. So everything's in mono. For this track, the mastering compressor I used was the Glue. I think everybody knows this plugin. Slow attack to let my transients in, fast release just to reset the compressor really fast. I think I'm only getting around 4 dBs of compression, and I did a makeup gain of 2.8 dBs, 4:1 ratio, nothing crazy over here. So that's that. The limiter I chose for this track was the invisible limiter. I typically don't go for the invisible limiter a lot because it tends to squash things, but in this case it just worked. I usually keep the oversampling at 16 times, which gives you the highest quality, but obviously for CPU issues, I have to keep it at 1. Input gain, just boosting 6 dBs. See, my CPU is getting a little bit heavy now, but that's really bringing the loudness into this. The last plugin I use for that extra little bit of loudness is this Oxford UAD inflator. I absolutely love this plugin. I use it on all my masters. It doesn't really do much besides this effect knob, which I don't know what it's doing. It's not adding any, I guess, compression or distortion to the track. It just kind of adds loudness. I think underneath the hood, it's like some parallel compressor type of thing where you blend it back in. But I'm only doing it 24.3%, and it just adds a little bit of loudness. So before... it just gets the ever so slightest bit louder. Yeah, and that's my mastering chain for this track. Nothing too crazy. Everything was pretty much done in the mix as I showed you. And that's the full track.
And that's it for the project file. I hope you guys learned something today in this masterclass. If you like the track, if you like the masterclass, please tweet us down here at Purari DJ, at DJ Frankie Steele. Let us know what you think, what you want to see in the next masterclass. Don't forget to stream My God on Spotify right now. Tag us in your Instagram stories, tag us in your Facebook posts. We'd love to see that. Until next time, Purari out. Peace.